Hello, Dr. James Bogesh, expert in health and longevity, and as a practicing chiropractor and a martial artist of 35 years, this study really drives home what I've experienced and what I tell patients. And I have a lot of patients that come to me that maybe they've had an injury, they've seen another chiropractor, they've seen a PT, and they were given stretches for or certain exercises for their recovery. And sometimes that's all they're doing for exercise is these prescribed stretches, and generally you're not going to get your heart rate up, but I am much more a fan of exercising than I am exercises. So in other words, get your butt out and move. There is every indication that, so what I'll usually say is a softball game, you've got somebody who's otherwise active and doesn't stretch, and you take a couch potato who stretches for an hour before the game. I'm still going to suggest that the athlete is going to be less likely injured during that softball game than somebody who stretched for an hour. And that's because their ligaments, their tendons, their soft tissues are used to having some degree of challenge, and they don't become crusty, for lack of a better term. And so if we're doing that, if we're a couch potato, if we're not otherwise active, no amount of stretching in the world is really going to help you in injury prevention versus getting out there and moving around. So, and that is something I have held my recommendations on for a long time. And even in martial arts with jiu-jitsu, I find that once my body temperature warms up, that I'm going to be okay and I don't need to do a whole lot of stretching beforehand. Now, this ties back in with this particular study, and it was a small study. It looked at 18 people. 6 people did resistance training, 6 people did stretching, static stretching, and 6 people were served as the control. And they looked to see how much each of those had an effect on both the hip and the low back extensors and their flexibility. And it turns out that resistance training and static stretching had about the same type of impact. Now, we're not talking about injury here, we're talking about just general flexibility. And I really feel that resistance training is challenging those ligaments, challenging those tendons, the fascia, everything that lies around those joints, and keeps them pliable. Instead of thinking about flexibility, think about pliability. And movement is just key for this. So if you're doing stretches that some provider gave you 10 years ago and that's all you're doing for exercise, it's not going to be enough. Like those exercises might be okay, but you're still gonna have to be moving around, getting your heart rate up, challenging your joints. Doesn't have to be jiu-jitsu or Muay Thai kickboxing, but certainly something to get out. Pickleball is a great example of ways to start to challenge your system, but we've got to move. Just stretching and simple isolated exercises alone are not going to do it as far as prevention of injury. As always, I'll post a link to this particular study in the description. Make sure you like this video, share it with somebody who you think needs the information, and subscribe to the channel.